The World Health Organization doesn't want you to know about this huge conspiracy, and it's directly related to the misinformation and how they're pushing for this message that, no, don't worry, we're not after controlling the entire population. That's just a conspiracy talk. Well, you guys know the difference between some conspiracy theories and the truth, right? Here's something that's absolutely certain. They're expecting another surge of the C-19 virus, and now we need to remember the guidelines from the WHO.
Infectious diseases physician Dr. Isaac Bogosh says it's important to remember these guidelines are given with the entire world's population in mind, and Canada may need to adapt them to fit.
There's a little bit of difference, but not a ton. I mean, we are using, for example, Paxlovid for those at highest risk. We're probably not using it very much for those at moderate risk for hospitalization, and that's probably a very reasonable thing to do. Globally, nobody should be using ivermectin for COVID-19 therapeutics unless it's part of a clinical trial.
National data shows COVID-19 cases started surging in August, but are on the decline. Health experts are predicting another surge in the coming months and say getting an up-to-date vaccine is one of the best ways to protect yourself and your loved ones from COVID-19. And the tried and true methods of masks, hand washing, and staying home when you're sick will continue to help limit community spread.
Are we back in time right now? Because the last part sounded a lot like what they had us doing during the health crisis. Now, don't get me wrong, washing your hands, it's definitely essential, right? With or without a deadly virus going around. But maybe, just maybe, we shouldn't go so far as to give unelected officials, unelected leaders, control over our sovereignty. I mean, that's just a bit overboard, you know what I mean? But as per the WHO, governments are lining up to sign themselves and their people in. Now, before I even get into that, do you guys agree to willfully give over your rights to unelected leaders if that's what they think is needed to be able to handle this next pandemic? Comment a quick yes or no down below on that one. And while you guys are at it, spread out these important updates by dropping a like for the video and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to turn on all notifications so you don't miss out on the future updates that I release.
There will always be new pathogens with pandemic potential. It's not a matter of if, but when. I'm pleased that more leaders are now joining the call for a pandemic treaty, which would be a generational commitment to keeping the world safe.
Generational commitment? So this isn't a short-term thing, huh? You see, these are the terms that you need to be aware of. And they just kind of like slide these in so easily. And once you analyze it, you realize the gravity of what they're saying here. But you know, the WHO is refuting all this talk about control and, you know, taking over governments. I mean, their director even went on X, formerly known as Twitter, to tell us that this is all misinformation. You see right there, he's saying that this is all fake news, lies, conspiracy theories. And I mean, like, he's saying that this pandemic accord, they had to rename it from a treaty for a multitude of reasons, all right? So this pandemic accord does not grant the WHO authority over countries, and he's saying that all countries involved should counter, I repeat, counter these false narratives. Oh, is that why the Biden administration is now pissed off about being told not to talk on social media platforms? Because you guys are aware of the power of social media, and I mean, just how far it can actually reach, right? Heck, did you guys hear that the president's re-election campaign is thinking of getting him on TikTok? Like, can you imagine the president doing like a viral dance or something like that? I guess this proves they deem social media as a huge factor when it comes to spreading information, be it true or false. Now, the message from the WHO's director is very clear. All these things that we say are lies, and they're not after controlling the masses if and when a new virus emerges. But their accord, their paper, kind of sounds very different from what he's saying now. This is from their paper, folks, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but legally binding is kind of a tough term, isn't it? Because that means a contract. It's like getting a phone at AT&T and agreeing to pay for it for whatever amount of time that you've agreed to. If you stop paying, then say goodbye to your line. Like, it's insane to think that they want us in this fantasy world where we just kind of accept any single thing that they push on us, thinking that it's just going to be for the greater good. But if you think about it, the recommendations weren't all that great. Remember lockdowns? They love those lockdowns, huh? But were you aware of what that did to the development of some adolescents? Well, a new study is saying that lockdowns and the health crisis changed the brains of teenagers. And I'm talking about literally changing it, okay? So the University of Washington reported a larger than normal thinning of the cerebral cortex in a group of 124 adolescents who were by chance being monitored before the C-19 pandemic. They were again checked after the lockdowns, and yeah, it showed accelerated aging during this time.
When I was starting to understand, you get a better idea of what exactly was happening to teenagers and get a good idea of what was happening to their brains specifically. A lot of it's what you say. I mean, it was the uncertainty of what was happening during the pandemic, but a lot of it also was the sort of reduced social structure of being around friends and the social development that simply happens by being around friends and other people, during your teenage years in particular. And so they had these studies already underway. Pandemic happens, they continue the study. So now they can look at brains before the pandemic and then during the pandemic. And what they found was pretty staggering. Let me show you here on this brain model, if I can. Basically, they showed that the brains aged much more quickly. What does that mean? This area of the brain over here, which is called the cortex, think of that like as the bark on a tree, the outer layer. It got thinner. That happens with age. It happened much more quickly during the pandemic for these adolescent brains. That's the area of the brain that's responsible for executive thinking, for example. At the same time, you look deep into the brain, areas over here, which are responsible for your ability to regulate emotions, for example, they aged more quickly as well. So all these things were sort of happening simultaneously. And it was something that they could actually study in these children because, again, they had these scans before the pandemic and then again, at least a year into the pandemic.
Yeah, this is not some conspiracy theory here or even opinion. This is an actual study. How do you refute that? There's also another one that showed how the response to this crisis may be one of the worst disruptions in the history of American education. How do you go around and say that you need to have influence over the people for the coming crisis when your initial approach to the previous one, in a word, sucked? I'm sorry, that's just a really off term to use like that, but it did. Their approach sucked and it didn't do many of us or our kids any favors. Tell you what, if you think that the lockdowns and all these mandates helped us grow and kept us safe, comment a 1 down below. And if not, comment 2. I'm really interested to see how this community feels about all this because we are basically the voice of reason in all of this. We're like the wall that protects the nation, you know what I mean? And we have this wall that's built up through platforms like this one. And that's why I need you guys to continue to like these videos because it helps push it out to even more people who need to know what's happening. I mean, ignorance is bliss, but this one, it's something that everyone needs to know about now. But you might be asking, why the urgency, Ron, right? Well, I'm gonna show you. You see, in their accord, or at least the initial one that they actually released to the public, it says these things. This is their response to the supposed misinformation on social media. And as you guys can see, they want to be able to manage infodemics, which includes going through social media platforms. So I guess if the Biden administration isn't successful with their push to tell companies what we can and cannot say, then the WHO can step in with this paper and talk to the platforms themselves. It doesn't take a genius to see that right there, that part where they conduct regular social listening and analysis. I mean, that just sounds shady right out the bat. Because who decides what's right from wrong? Who says what's misinformation? Because they said a lot of things during the health crisis that turned out to be wrong. They silenced a lot of people who were actually right. And to say that we shouldn't oppose legally binding documents that may give them the right to control us, well, I can't get down with that. You know what I'm saying? But again, I'm just showing you guys what they're saying. I'm giving you guys the numbers, the data, facts of the matter. And at the end of the day, it's totally up to you to decide what you think is right. So make sure you guys let me know down below in the comments. And before I go, I want to thank you so much for your time. Thanks for liking the video. Keep safe, and I'll see you on the next one.